The sky above Earth was no longer blue. Dark shapes covered the horizon, stretching from one end of the world to the other. Thousands of massive alien ships floated in silence, blocking the sun and casting long shadows over the oceans and cities. Below, in the middle of orbit, the largest ship, a monstrous fortress shaped like a claw, opened its combs. A deep, cold voice filled the airwaves. "People of Earth, this is Supreme Commander Vrax of the Draconian Empire. You are now under our control. Your resistance is meaningless. Surrender your planet or be destroyed." On Earth, in a command center buried deep underground, General Harper listened quietly. He was an old man, but his eyes were sharp. Around him, technicians and officers whispered nervously. One young officer swallowed hard. "Sir, what do we do? Their fleet, it's enormous." General Harper didn't answer. He kept staring at the massive ships above them, his hands clasped behind his back. "Sir?" the officer asked again. Finally, Harper spoke. "We wait." The Draconian fleet grew impatient. After several minutes of silence from Earth, another broadcast came through. "Your silence is foolish. We will begin. Cleansing your cities as an example." And they did. Beams of light shot down from the alien ships, slamming into skyscrapers and streets. But to the Draconian surprise, the buildings didn't collapse. The light fizzled into nothing as it struck invisible barriers. From the fortress ship, Vrax snarled, "What is this trickery?" On Earth, Harper simply smirked. He turned to his officers and said quietly, "Let them come closer." In orbit, the Draconians grew more aggressive. Landing ships began descending through the clouds, deploying squadrons of armored soldiers to the surface. Cameras on there. Drones streamed images back to the flagship. Empty streets, dark cities, no humans in sight. The first soldiers touched down on the cracked concrete of New York City. The air was still, no wind, no sound. One of them laughed. Pathetic. There, hiding like insects. But then, a shadow moved at the edge of their vision. "Did you see that?" one soldier asked. "What?" "I didn't see anything," another replied. But then another shadow flickered by, faster this time. Then another. On their monitors, faint readings began to appear, energy spikes all around them. Headquarters. "We're detecting something underground." Static swallowed the transmission. On the flagship, Vrax leaned forward, claws digging into the metal railing. "What is happening?" "Down there? Report." No reply. One by one, the ground squad stopped transmitting. Only silence remained. Then a single image came through from the last squad's camera before it cut out. A dark cloud rising from the streets, twisting, growing, taking shape into something massive. And in the center of the cloud, two glowing red eyes opened. Vrax stared at the screen. His officers shifted uncomfortably. One of them whispered, That isn't possible." Vrax barked, "Fire all weapons. Destroy that thing." The fleet opened fire. Missiles, plasma beams, kinetic rounds, all rained down onto the growing cloud. But nothing happened. The cloud seemed to drink the light and energy, growing larger with each strike. Below, in the human command center, General Harper watched calmly. A junior officer asked, "Sir, shouldn't we do something? They're destroying the city." Harper glanced at him. "You don't understand. It's already awake. There's nothing left for us to do." In orbit, panic began spreading through the Draconian fleet. One of their smaller ships suddenly split in half without warning. No weapon detected, no explosion. The two halves drifted apart before disintegrating completely. Another ship simply vanished. 1 second it was there. The next it was gone, leaving behind only a faint scream through the comms. "Impossible!" Vrax shouted. "Nothing can penetrate our shields, nothing." The cloud now towered over the city, stretching miles into the sky. Its shape was clearer now. Dark wings, long claws, a face like a skull made of black crystal. A deep, ancient voice, not from any human, boomed across the planet. You were warned. On the flagship, Vrax roared. What is this? What are you? The voice answered. I am Oblivion. I am what your ancestors feared. I am what this world buried. And now you have woken me. The Draconians continued firing desperately, but the cloud, Oblivion, moved its shot tendrils of shadow into space, wrapping around another battleship and crushing it into dust. On the surface, Harper watched the destruction silently. His officers were pale and shaking. One of them whispered, Sir, what is that thing? Harper finally spoke. Oblivion. A weapon. No, a curse. We built it long before the galaxy knew us. Then we hid it. We promised never to use it again. But, he paused, they forced our hand. In space, the Draconian fleet tried to flee. Engines roared as ships turned toward open space, but space itself began to warp. Stars stretched and bent. The Draconians' path vanished, replaced by a swirling void. They were trapped. The fleet's communications were chaos, screams, static, desperate orders. Jump! Jump to hyperspace. One captain cried, but Oblivion whispered into their minds one by one, you will not escape. You are nothing. One of the largest dreadnoughts attempted to ram into the cloud. Oblivion caught it mid-flight, crushed it like glass, then hurled the pieces back into the fleet, destroying 3 more ships. On Earth, the humans finally responded to the Draconian broadcast. A calm female voice spoke over the comms. This is Earth. We did not wish for this. You left us no choice. Vrax slammed his fists against the console. No, you can't. We are the Dra. His voice cut off as his ship cracked down the middle. Swallowed by the cloud. It was over in minutes. The once mighty Draconian fleet, which had blotted out the sun, now floated as broken debris around the planet. Oblivion slowly folded its wings, its red eyes dimming as it descended back into the clouds. The shadows melted into the streets, sinking below the Earth. In orbit, only silence remained. On the ground, General Harper stood outside now, under the clear blue sky. He watched pieces of Draconian metal rain down like shooting stars. An officer walked up beside him, still shaking. Sir, what happens now? Harper didn't answer at first. Then he said softly, we wait, and we pray it sleeps again. Far below, the cracked Earth glowed faintly, as if something was still awake, watching. Later a final message was sent from Earth to the entire galaxy. The words were simple. This is why you leave us alone. And then, silence. The galaxy would never forget. The streets of New York were eerily quiet. Ash still hung in the air after the first Draconian attack. Entire blocks were empty, as if the city had been abandoned overnight. Yet under the silence, something moved. Captain Lyric of the Draconian Ground Forces stood at the head of his squad, armored from head to toe in black metal. His clawed feet scraped against the cracked pavement as he walked slowly between skyscrapers. Scanners show no human presence, reported one of his soldiers. No life signs detected. Lyrac's reptilian eyes narrowed. Then where are they? Where is their army? Where is their resistance? The soldier shrugged, uneasy. Maybe they all ran away, Captain. Maybe they hid underground. Lyric growled low in his throat. Cowards. Like insects hiding under rocks. He raised his arm and motioned forward. Keep moving. Search every corner. I want this city cleared before the hour is over. The squad fanned out, stomping through streets littered with glass and rubble. Above them, the rest of the Draconian fleet floated like a dark ceiling, ready to send more troops as needed. One soldier kicked open the door to a building and scanned. The lobby. Empty, he called back. Another entered an alley. No heat signatures here. Everything was still. Too still. Back on the Draconian flagship, Commander Vrax watched the feeds from the ground teams. His claws drummed impatiently. On the console, Why hasn't the city been secured yet? He barked. An officer bowed his head nervously. Sir, there are no humans to fight. The city seems deserted. Vrax's eyes narrowed. And yet, something feels wrong. Down below, Lyrak's squad pressed deeper into the city. One soldier stopped suddenly, staring at the cracked road beneath his feet. Captain, he said slowly, do you hear that? Lyrak paused and tilted his head. At first he heard nothing. But then, a faint hum, like metal grinding far below. It was coming from underground. Scanners, Lyrak ordered. Tell me what's beneath us. A soldier raised his handheld device, frowning as it beeped strangely. Sir, there's some kind of energy source, but it's moving fast. Lyrak snatched the device from his hands and stared at the readings. The energy signature grew larger and closer every second. What? In the Lyrak began, but his words were cut off when the ground shook violently. The street split open with a deafening crack, throwing soldiers to the ground. From the dark crack rose nothing. At least nothing they could see, but something was there. Ripple of air passed over them, sending shivers down their spines. One soldier raised his weapon and fired wildly. Contact! He screamed. Something's here. But his plasma bolts hit nothing. On the flagship, alarms blared. Vrax jumped to his feet. What happened? An officer turned to him, pale. Sir, Squad 1's vitals are dropping. Fast, Squad 2 also under attack, but we can't see the attacker. Vrax slammed his fist into the console. Impossible. Show me. The screens flickered to show the ground squads firing in all directions. But the cameras captured nothing but shadows. Soldiers screamed and vanished, pulled into the air by unseen claws. One by one, their signals went dark. Lyrak fought to regain control. He fired his rifle into the emptiness, but the weapon was ripped from his hands by an invisible force. Fall back, he roared. Back to the dropships. But it was too late. A massive shape, still hidden in shimmering air, slammed down in front of him. Cracking the pavement, Lyrak looked up, and for a split second, he thought he saw glowing red eyes inside the distortion. He stumbled backward, claws scraping the ground. What are you? He shouted at the empty air. A cold voice, low and ancient, whispered directly into his mind. We are what you cannot see, what you should never have awakened. On the flagship, Vrax's jaw tightened as more red lights blinked out on the screen. Send reinforcements. He barked. Crush whatever is down there. But sir, an officer stammered, we still don't know what we're fighting. Vrax snarled and shoved him aside. I don't care what it is. Kill it. More landing ships descended through the clouds, disgorging hundreds of Draconian troops into the city. They poured into the streets, weapons raised, scanning every corner. But the city seemed to change as they moved in. Shadows lengthened. Buildings groaned and shifted, as if alive. Windows darkened, reflecting not the soldiers, but other shapes. One soldier stopped, staring at his reflection. Captain, my reflection. It's smiling at me, he whispered. Then the glass shattered, and a black claw reached through, dragging him into the building. Screams filled the comms once more. Lyrak ran through the chaos, trying to rally his remaining men. Form up, he shouted. We fight together. But unseen forces plucked soldiers away one by one. Energy bolts fired into the air, only to be deflected back at their own ranks. Every shadow seemed alive. Every street corner hid some lurking. Horror! Lyrak finally raised his wrist communicator and called the flagship. This is Captain Lyrak. We are under attack by an unknown defense. We cannot see it. We cannot fight it. Vrax's voice growled back. Coward! Stand and fight. This planet will not defeat the Draconian Empire. Lyrak screamed into the device. You don't understand. You're not here. You can't see what's happening. The line went dead. Above, in the flagship, Vrax stared at the city below, around him. Officers exchanged nervous glances. One of them whispered, "Sir, perhaps we should pull back." But Vrax shook his head. "No, this is our empire's destiny. This planet will bow or burn. Prepare the orbital strike." On the ground, Lyric heard the ominous hum of the fleet's superweapons charging. He looked up and saw the sky glowing red. But then, something strange happened. The glow of the superweapons faded. The ships above began to shudder and spark. "No!" Lyric breathed. On the flagship, Vrax's officers shouted in panic, "Sir, our systems shutting down." Power loss across the fleet. One by one, the great ships above Earth began to drift, their engines dead. Below, the air rippled again. And more unseen shapes rose from the ground, massive figures outlined by faint, glowing lines. One of them reached up toward the sky. And an entire Draconian cruiser cracked apart like a toy. Lyric dropped to his knees. Watching the destruction around him, soldiers fled in all directions, weapons abandoned. He could hear that cold voice again, whispering to all of them at once, "This is our home. You do not belong here." Above, the flagship itself began to tilt, its engines sputtering as systems failed. Vrax gripped the railing, his eyes wide. "No, no, this cannot happen. We are the Draconian Empire." "We are." His words were cut off as a black tendril of energy stabbed through the hull. The flagship groaned, split in half, and exploded silently in the void. The surviving Draconian troops on the ground stopped fighting. They stood frozen, staring at the sky as debris rained down. Lyric slowly rose to his feet, his claws shaking around him. The invisible shapes began to fade, slipping back into the ground. The city returned to silence. Only dust and the wreckage of a proud fleet remained. Lyric turned in a slow circle. All his soldiers were gone. Only he remained. He felt the voice one last time in his mind. "Leave and tell them. Tell them what waits here." Lyric swallowed hard, then ran. Hours later, a single Draconian escape ship lifted off from Earth, its hull scorched and dented. Lyric sat inside, silent, staring at his claws. He had no words. Above him, the planet grew smaller, but he could still feel the eyes of the unseen defenders watching. Waiting. As the escape ship drifted into space, a final message from Earth echoed across the stars. "We are not defenseless. We never were. Come again, and you will see." The galaxy listened. And, for the first time, it was afraid. The silence after the Draconian landing was worse than the noise of their weapons. High above the Earth, their fleet hung motionless, thousands of ships blocking out the stars. Broken pieces of their first squads littered the streets of New York, but no human bodies were found. Inside the underground command center, General Harper stood before a massive screen showing the enemy fleet. His officers spoke quietly behind him, afraid to break the silence. One young officer finally said, "Sir, the Draconians have sent more ships into orbit. They've stopped firing, but..." Harper didn't turn around. His voice was calm. "But they haven't left." "Yes, sir, they're waiting." Harper studied the largest ship, the fortress shaped like a claw. "And so are we," he murmured. On the flagship, Commander Vrax paced his command deck. The destruction of his ground squad still replayed in his mind. His eyes burned with anger. "You think shadows can stop me?" he hissed. "You think hiding in the dark makes you strong?" An officer approached carefully. "Sir, our scans show energy readings increasing below the surface. Something is building up, massive, unknown." Vrax whipped around. "Then strike now. Crush whatever they're hiding before it's ready." In the streets below, nothing moved. The city was empty, but the air felt heavy. Then the sound began. At first, it was only a faint hum, like wind through glass. But then it grew louder, a deep vibration in the bones. Buildings trembled. Windows shattered. In orbit, Sensors on the Draconian ships flashed red. "Commander," shouted an officer. "Something is rising from the Earth's surface." Vrax leaned over the screen. A faint dark cloud began to form over New York. It swirled slowly, growing taller, wider, darker. "What is that?" he demanded. No one answered. On Earth. Harper stared at the monitors. The cloud was visible now, towering into the sky, its edges flashing with crimson light. An officer's hands shook on the controls. "Sir, it's begun." Harper gave a small nod. "The first strike." The officer swallowed hard. Should we evacuate?" Harper shook his head. "No, if it wanted us gone, we would already be gone." The cloud twisted higher. And then a flash of black lightning arced into the sky. On the flagship, Vrax flinched as the nearest cruiser exploded. Not from the outside, but from within. The ship split into pieces, tearing apart like paper. "Impossible!" Vrax roared. "How did they?" Before he could finish, another ship detonated. Then another. On the screens, ships flickered and vanished, leaving nothing behind. "What is happening?" Vrax demanded. The officer's voice cracked. "Sir, something inside the cloud is targeting our ships." But no weapons detected. No impact. Nothing. Vrax's claws dug into the metal railing. "Find it. Find IT." On the surface, black tendrils of energy reached into the clouds, wrapping around the buildings like hands. One tendril stretched toward the sky, toward a massive Draconian battleship, and pierced it like a spear. The battleship cracked, split, and fell in silence. Harper watched calmly from the command center. An officer gasped. "Sir, our sensors say the ships aren't just being destroyed. They're being erased, like they never existed." Harper nodded. "That's the point." On the flagship, panic spread. Officers shouted over each other as more ships fell. From the sky, red lights flared on every console. Shields failing. Engines offline. Hull breaches on all decks. Vrax grabbed the nearest officer and shoved him aside. "Fire everything. Burn the city. Kill whatever they're hiding." Massive plasma cannons on the fleet's underside began to glow. "Sir," the gunner shouted. "Target's locked." "Do IT." Vrax roared. A beam of burning plasma shot down toward the city. It never reached the ground. The cloud above New York shifted, coiling like a snake, and swallowed the beam. Not a single street below was touched. Then the cloud struck back. A huge column of black energy shot up from the earth, tearing through the flagship's shields and slamming into its hull. The flagship groaned, its metal cracking. Vrax was thrown to the floor as sparks rained down from the ceiling. "Report," he barked. An officer staggered to his feet. "Hull integrity dropping. We can't stop it." Vrax bared his fangs. "We are the Draconian Empire. We cannot fall to this." But even as he spoke, the ship shook violently, outside. The dark cloud wrapped around the flagship like a hand and began to crush. On Earth, Harper closed his eyes as the sky lit up. The flagship burst apart in silence, breaking into molten fragments that rained down. For a moment, everything was still again. Then more tendrils of black light shot upward, spearing the remaining fleet. One by one, the mighty ships were pulled into the cloud, shredded into nothing. In the chaos above, a small group of Draconian soldiers on the ground huddled together in terror. One of them whispered, We shouldn't have come here." Another clutched his helmet in both hands. "We woke something we don't understand." From behind them, a voice, cold and ancient, spoke directly into their minds. "You came to take what is not yours." They froze, turning around slowly. Nothing was there, but the shadows behind them stretched longer, darker, and then rose into shapes with glowing red eyes. One by one, the soldiers vanished, swallowed by the dark. On the Draconian fleet's remnants, a few ships tried to escape. Engines roared as they turned away from Earth and fired into open space. But space itself seemed to twist. Ahead of them, the stars stretched into long white lines, then snapped back, like rubber bands. One of the fleeing captains screamed into his cum. "We can't jump. The path is blocked." "You cannot leave," the voice answered. The escaping ships were pulled backward, one after another, into the swirling blackness over Earth. And then, silence. At last, the sky cleared. The dark clouds slowly unraveled, shrinking back into the city below. Where it touched the streets, the cracks closed. Buildings straightened. Windows glimmered as though nothing had happened. Above, the once proud Draconian fleet was gone. Only tiny fragments of metal drifted through orbit, reflecting the sunlight. On Earth, Harper stood outside now, hands behind his back. An officer approached, his face pale. "Sir, it's over. The fleet is gone." Harper nodded slightly. "No. This was just the first strike." The officer hesitated. "Then, what happens next?" Harper glanced at the sky. "That depends on them. If they come again." He let the words trail off. From far below, in the deepest cracks of the Earth, a faint rumble echoed, like a distant growl. Far away, in another corner of the galaxy, a lone Draconian escape pod drifted into darkness. Inside, a battered captain clutched the edge of his seat, his eyes wide and unblinking. He stared at nothing, whispering the same words over and over. It was waiting. It was waiting. At last he activated the distress beacon. His claws trembled as he spoke. "This is Captain Sorak, of the Draconian Empire. Do not approach Earth. I repeat, do not approach. The humans have something." He swallowed hard. Something worse than death. Then his signal faded into static. On Earth, as the dust settled, Harper looked one last time at the dark cracks in the street. For a moment, he thought he saw two faint red eyes staring back. Then they vanished. He straightened his uniform and turned away. "Let them tell their story," he said softly. "Let the galaxy know what happens when you wake the dark." And beneath the city, the unseen force whispered in the shadows, waiting. Deep underground, in a hidden chamber beneath the ruins of an ancient city, the air was cold and still. Dust floated in beams of pale light that leaked through cracks in the ceiling. Dr. Lena Ramirez stood before a vast metallic door, her breath catching as she studied strange symbols carved into its surface. "Are you sure this is the place?" her assistant Mark asked nervously. Lena nodded slowly. "This is it. The chamber the old record spoke about." Mark swallowed. "The one they said no one should open?" "Yes," Lena said, fingers tracing the symbols. "Because what's inside could change everything." Suddenly, the ground trembled lightly beneath their feet. Miles above, General Harper stared at a flickering holoscreen showing images from Lena's expedition. "Are you certain the legends are true?" he asked the scientist over the comm. Lena's voice was steady, but with a hint of awe. "We found evidence of a weapon. Not just a weapon, but something alive." Harper's eyes narrowed. "Alive?" Lena hesitated. "The old texts call it Oblivion, a machine created in the darkest days of humanity's forgotten war. It was made to protect Earth at all costs, but it nearly destroyed everything instead." Back in the chamber, the massive door began to hum, ancient mechanisms stirring after centuries of silence. Mark stepped back, eyes wide. "What's happening?" Lena pressed her hand against a glowing panel. "It's opening." With a heavy groan, the door slid aside, revealing a dark cavern filled with metal structures glowing faintly red. Inside stood a colossal figure, half machine, half shadow. Its eyes flickered open, glowing red, cold, and unblinking. A deep voice echoed, though no lips moved. "You have awakened me." Outside, in the command center, the room went silent as Lena's voice came through again. "Oblivion is not just a weapon, it's a sentient defense system. It can think, feel, and it remembers." Harper's jaw tightened. "Remember what?" Lena's voice was grim. The horrors of war, the betrayals, the destruction humanity once brought upon itself, and it has been waiting for the right moment to act. Far away in the Draconian fleet, Commander Vrax studied intercepted transmissions of Earth's secret weapon. He sneered. A forgotten machine? A legend? No matter, we will burn it like we burn everything. His officers nodded. Prepare the fleet for an all-out attack. We will destroy this oblivion before it can harm us. Back in the chamber, the great machine moved. Its metal plates shifted like living skin. Lena stepped forward, trying to steady her voice. Oblivion, do you understand why we disturbed you? The machine's voice was low, echoing in her mind. You awakened a power you do not control. Your enemies have come to take me, to use me, to destroy me. Lena swallowed hard. We want to help. We want to stop the war. Then prove it, the voice replied above ground. The city trembled as Oblivion's awakening sent pulses through the earth. Draconian sensors detected strange energy flows rising from the planet's core. Vrax snarled. They are activating it. We must strike before it is fully ready. The Draconian fleet formed tight battle formations underground. Lena and her team watched as Oblivion's core lit up, rivers of glowing red energy flowing like blood through metal veins. Suddenly, the chamber shook violently. Mark shouted. The fleet is firing. They're attacking. The walls cracked as distant explosions rattled the earth. Lena looked at Oblivion. You have to protect us. The machine's red eyes blazed brighter. I will protect this world, no matter the cost. In orbit, the first Draconian cruisers fired plasma beams at the surface, but the beams vanished mid-air, swallowed by a rising black mist, shields failing. One Draconian captain yelled, "What is that?" Vrax's voice was cold and furious. It's the weapon. The machine. On the ground, entire city blocks lit up with glowing towers of energy. Oblivion's power flowed through ancient human structures long forgotten by the galaxy. Draconian troops on the surface were thrown back by invisible forces. One soldier screamed. It's like the city itself is fighting. In the command center, Harper turned to Lena. How long until it's fully awake? Lena's eyes were serious. Minutes, maybe less. Suddenly, a monitor flickered, showing the dark cloud forming once again over the city, this time larger, stronger. Harper's voice was steady. Then we prepare for the fight of our lives. Back underground, Lena reached out to touch Oblivion's metal. Is there any way to stop it if it turns against us? The machine's voice echoed softly. I am not your enemy unless you betray me. Suddenly, alarms blared. Incoming! The Draconians are breaking through. Lena grabbed her equipment. We have no choice. We must face them. Outside, the first clashes erupted. Draconian soldiers fired into shimmering walls of energy. Their weapons shattered like glass. Oblivion's tendrils wrapped around enemy machines, crushing and tearing them apart. From above, the fleet unleashed a barrage, but the city's defenses held. Vrax's frustration grew. This is madness. Earth should have fallen hours ago. Inside the chamber, Lena watched the battle rage through the surface sensors. She whispered, Oblivion ... Don't fail us now. The machine's red eyes glowed brighter. I will not. The battle continued for hours, but slowly. The Draconian fleet weakened. Ships exploded, ground forces were decimated, and the alien army began to retreat. Vrax hissed through clenched teeth. This is not over. As the sun began to rise, the city lay battered but unbroken. Harper looked out over the skyline. We've survived ... But the truth is clear. Oblivion is both our greatest hope and our greatest danger. Lena nodded. We buried it for a reason. Now the galaxy knows Earth hides a secret it will fight to protect. From deep beneath the Earth, the faintest pulse of light beat like a heartbeat. The forgotten truth was alive. The sky over Earth was no longer blue dot where sunlight should have shone. A black storm twisted above the planet, thick with red lightning and shadows. From orbit, what remained of the Draconian fleet watched in horror as the dark cloud expanded. Growing larger, reaching into space itself, inside his crippled command ship, Commander Vrax stared at the swirling storm below. His claws gripped the railing so tightly the metal groaned. This can't be real, he muttered. One of his officers approached slowly. Sir, the officer said, voice shaking. It's growing. Whatever it is, it's not stopping. Vrax didn't look at him. Then we burn it to ash, he growled. Charge the remaining cannons. Prepare every missile. If it lives, it dies. Far below, in the underground command center, General Harper stood silently as alarms blared around him. He watched the monitors, which showed Oblivion fully awake now, its enormous shadow reaching across cities, oceans, and mountains. Officers shouted at each other. We have no control anymore. One cried, It's acting on its own. Another yelled. Harper didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed on the screen. Finally, he said quietly, We never had control. It was never ours. To command. Behind him, Dr. Lena Ramirez entered the room, her face pale. Sir, she said softly, we may have made a mistake. Harper turned his head slightly. Maybe, he agreed. In the streets above, the world had changed. Oblivion's tendrils snaked through the city, lifting vehicles and tearing through buildings. Soldiers, both human and Draconian, stood frozen as unseen whispers filled the air. A young soldier raised his rifle. What do we do? He asked. His sergeant shook his head, fear in his eyes. Pray it doesn't look at us. The soldier swallowed and lowered his weapon. On the surface, Lena and her team emerged from the underground tunnel to see the full horror of what they'd unleashed. Above them, Oblivion's form was clearer now, massive wings of black mist, a head like a shattered mask, and countless glowing red eyes watching everything at once. It was alive. And it was angry. Mark, Lena's assistant, whispered, It doesn't even care if we're here. Does it? Lena stared upward, her lips pressed into a thin line. It cares, she said softly, but not in a way we understand. In orbit, Vrax's fleet fired. Blinding streams of plasma and hundreds of missiles rained down toward the planet. For a moment, it looked like the dark storm swallowed the light. Then Oblivion moved, one by one. The missiles stopped mid-air and reversed direction. Plasma beams split apart and curved back toward the ships. The Draconian fleet was struck by its own weapons, tearing through their shields like paper. On the bridge of his ship, Vrax roared, Nitrogen monoxide! Impossible! Fire again! His officer shouted back, We have nothing left to fire. Our weapons are gone. Down below, Harper watched pieces of the Draconian fleet falling into the atmosphere, burning like meteors. Lena stood next to him, arms crossed tightly. Oblivion isn't just defending anymore, she said. It's hunting them. Harper nodded once. They made it angry. In the streets, the whispers grew louder, filling the air with strange, cold words no one could quite understand. But the meaning was clear. It was saying, You do not belong here. Draconian ground troops scrambled through the streets, firing uselessly at the shadows. Some tried to retreat to their dropships, but the dropships were already crushed, their metal twisted into grotesque shapes. A soldier fell to his knees, covering his ears. Make it stop! He screamed. The ground beneath him opened like a mouth and swallowed him whole. On the flagship, Vrax stared at the destruction unfolding on every screen. His mighty fleet, once the pride of the Draconian Empire, was gone, reduced to floating wreckage in less than an hour. His officers stood silent, too afraid to speak. Vrax's claws trembled on the console. How? He whispered. How can they control such a thing? One officer finally dared to answer. They Don't, Commander. That's the point. On Earth, the storm thickened, blotting out the stars completely. Oblivion's voice, deeper than thunder, rumbled across the world. You came to conquer. You came to take. But you forgot this truth. This world is not yours. The last few Draconian ships tried to flee, their engines burning bright as they reached for open space. But Oblivion extended its wings, and the stars themselves seemed to bend, trapping the ships in a sphere of darkness. One by one, the ships blinked out of existence, leaving no trace. Lena walked forward to the edge of the ruined street and called upward. Oblivion! She shouted. Stop, enough! The shadows paused for just a moment. One of the red eyes turned toward her. Lena swallowed hard but held her ground. You've done what you were made to do. She continued. You've defended this world. But if you keep going, you'll destroy everything, even us. For a long moment, the storm was silent. Then a low whisper filled the air. You built me for war. You woke me for war. Do not ask me to sleep. While enemies remain, Lena took a shaky breath. They're gone. You've won. The eyes blinked once, for now. Slowly, the storm began to shrink. The shadows receded, pulling back into the ground. The red glow faded from the sky, leaving behind a faint dawn. The streets fell quiet again. Human soldiers and civilians stared upward, some crying, others standing in stunned silence. Even the air felt lighter now. On the Draconian flagship, or what was left of it, Vrax sat alone in a dark, broken bridge. The few who survived huddled in silence. He stared out at Earth, its surface calm once more, and whispered to himself, we were fools. We thought them weak, but they are worse than monsters. He closed his eyes. We woke a god. Later, in the command center, Harper stood in front of the big screen again. It showed Earth's sky, calm and blue now, and beyond it, nothing but scattered wreckage of the once mighty Draconian fleet. Lena entered quietly, still pale from what she'd seen. Is it over? She asked softly. Harper didn't turn. For now, he said. She walked closer. We can't keep it awake, General. Oblivion, it's too powerful, too dangerous. Harper finally looked at her, his eyes hard. We don't wake it, he said. Simply, others do, and every time they come, it will rise. He glanced back at the screen, his voice barely more than a whisper. That is our curse. And our shield. That night, Lena stood alone outside the ruins of the city. She looked at the stars above and thought she saw faint, red glimmers watching her back. She closed her eyes and spoke softly. I hope we never see you unleashed again. But deep below, the earth, in the dark where no one could see, a faint voice rumbled, you will. The battlefield was quiet now. The streets of New York lay in ruins, black smoke curling into the air. Broken pieces of Draconian ships littered the ground. Craters scarred the earth, but the silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like something was waiting. General Harper stood at the edge of the command center balcony, looking down at the city. His face was grim, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. Dr. Lena Ramirez walked up beside him, her voice low. They're gone, she sighed. We've driven them away. Oblivion made sure of it. Harper didn't move. They're not gone, he murmured. Not yet. Far beyond Earth, in the shadows of deep space, the survivors of the Draconian fleet floated in silence. Their ships were battered, torn, barely holding together. On the bridge of a half-destroyed dreadnought, Commander Vrax leaned over a console. His scales were dull, his claws chipped, his eyes burning with hate. We underestimated them, an officer said quietly. Vrax didn't reply. The officer swallowed and added, perhaps we should retreat. Regroup, warn the others not to return. Vrax's claws scraped the metal as he straightened. No, he hissed. We do not run from insects, we crush them. We burn them until there is nothing left. He turned to the others. Prepare. "The last weapon," he ordered. The officers looked at each other in fear. One finally spoke. "But that weapon was forbidden even by the Empire. If we use it, there will be nothing left of this planet or us." Vrax's lips curled into a cruel smile. "That is the point," he said coldly. "If we cannot rule it, we will destroy it." Back on Earth, Lena worked in the underground lab, studying data from Oblivion's last attack. She frowned at the readings, her hands trembling. Mark, her assistant, leaned closer. "What is it?" he asked. Lena shook her head. "These energy spikes," she said. "They're growing, even though the Draconians stopped attacking. It's like Oblivion is feeding on something." Mark's face paled. "Is it feeding on us?" Before Lena could answer, alarms blared throughout the base. A voice over the intercom shouted, "Incoming! Something massive is approaching Earth." Above the planet, space seemed to tear open. A giant dark shape emerged, the size of a small moon. Its surface glowed the symbols of the Draconian Empire. But distorted and broken, like they had been burned into the metal dot, it moved slowly. But every sensor on Earth screamed as its weapons charged. In the command center, Harper's eyes narrowed as he stared at the giant screen. "What is that?" he demanded. An officer replied, "Sir, it's the Draconian judgment engine. We thought it was just a myth. What does it do?" Harper asked. The officer's face was pale. "It destroys entire worlds." In the ruins above, Lena and Mark stood in the street, staring up at the sky as the massive weapon darkened the heavens. Mark whispered, "We can't stop that. Not even Oblivion can stop that." But Lena's eyes narrowed. "Then we don't ask it to stop," she said. "We let it finish what it started." Deep beneath the city, the air trembled as a low growl rose from the earth. Oblivion stirred. Red light seeped through cracks in the street. Its whisper filled the air again. "Dark and cold, they have returned. They have not learned, then they will be unmade." The ground split open as black tendrils shot into the sky. From the shadows, Oblivion rose, larger than before, its wings stretching across the city, its many eyes glowing brighter than blood. In orbit, Vrax watched the dark figure rise and smiled cruelly. "Yes," he murmured. "Come and face me, creature. Let us see which of us has no mercy." He slammed his claw onto the console. "Fire the judgment engine." Blinding light gathered at the center of the Draconian weapon, aimed directly at Earth. On the ground, Oblivion tilted its head toward the sky. The air burned. The clouds caught fire. But before the judgment engine could release its deadly beam, Oblivion moved. Its wings beat once, sending a shockwave into space. The first wave shattered smaller Draconian ships, sending them spinning into the void. Oblivion's tendrils shot upward, wrapping around the moon-sized weapon. The judgment engine trembled, groaning under the impossible pressure. On the bridge, Vrax bared his teeth. "More power!" he barked. The weapon pulsed, and a huge beam shot down toward the planet. Oblivion caught it in its claws. For a moment, it looked as if the creature was being pushed back. But then the red glow in its eyes blazed so bright it hurt to look at. With a roar that shook the stars, Oblivion crushed the beam in its hand, shattering it into harmless sparks. In the command center, Harper leaned forward. Lena stood behind him, her voice low. "It's not just defending anymore," she said. "It's hunting." Harper nodded. Double quotes, "Yes," he said. "And it won't stop." Oblivion's tendrils tightened around the judgment engine, crushing its metal shell. Vrax clung to the railing of his bridge as the walls cracked and sparks rained down. "You think you can destroy me?" he shouted at the creature outside. Oblivion's voice filled his mind, cold and merciless. "You destroyed yourself the moment you came here." With a final deafening sound, Oblivion ripped the judgment engine in half. The explosion lit up space like a second sun. Draconian ships were thrown away like toys, breaking apart as they spun into nothing. On Earth, Lena shielded her eyes from The blinding light, when it faded, the sky was quiet again, the stars slowly returned, and the black storm receded. Oblivion floated above the planet for a moment longer, its eyes scanning the heavens. Then its whisper came again. They will not return. Not while I remain. Slowly, it sank back into the earth, its tendrils retreating, the streets closing behind it as if nothing had happened. On what remained of the Draconian fleet, Vrax drifted in a shattered pod, his armor cracked, his body broken. He stared at Earth, his eyes filled with rage and fear. "We will return," he croaked weakly, but even he didn't believe it anymore. At dawn, Harper stood in the ruins of the city with Lena at his side. Around them, soldiers. Civilians slowly emerged from hiding, staring at the calm sky. Harper looked down at the ground beneath his boots. "Do you think it's sleeping again?" he asked quietly. Lena shook her head. "No," she said. "It's watching." Harper nodded slightly. "Good," he said. "Let them come again. Let them see what no mercy looks like." Beneath the city, in the silent dark, Oblivion's eyes blinked once, faint and red. Its whisper filled the earth one last time that night. No mercy. Not for them. Not ever. The air was thick with dust and silence. All around the city, the remains of the Draconian fleet glimmered like fallen stars. General Harper stood on the balcony of the underground command center, his coat heavy with ash. His eyes stayed fixed on the horizon, where faint red lights still glowed under the earth. "They'll come again," he said quietly. Behind him, Dr. Lena Ramirez walked into the room, carrying a tablet. "They already have," she replied. Harper turned slightly. "What do you mean?" Lena's voice was calm, but her hands shook as she handed him the tablet. "New energy spikes," she said. "Not from the sky this time, from beneath, deep, too deep to scan properly." Harper stared at the data. "It's not them," he said slowly. "It's something worse. Far above, beyond the reach of human sensors." The Draconian remnants floated in the black of space. What remained of Commander Vrax was barely recognizable. His armor was broken, his scales dull and cracked. Yet his eyes still burned with fury. In the shadows of his escape pod, he leaned forward and whispered to himself. "You think you've won," he hissed. "But you don't understand. You can't kill us all." From a hidden compartment, he pulled out a small, black sphere, faintly glowing with green light. "The final blow," he muttered, clutching it tight. On Earth, Lena and Mark stood. In the ruined streets. Above them, the sky was dark, but calm. Mark looked uneasy. "It feels quiet," he said. Lena nodded, though her eyes stayed on the cracks in the street below. "Too quiet," she said. Then the ground shook. At first it was gentle, a faint rumble. But soon the street split open, sending dust and stone flying. Deep within the earth came a roar so loud it made the air vibrate. Mark stumbled back. "What now?" he cried. Lena didn't answer. She was staring at the shadow rising from the cracked earth. Oblivion. It was awake again. Taller, darker, more terrible than ever. Its many red eyes burned, and its voice rolled through the air like thunder. "You woke me too soon." In orbit, Vrax grinned as he activated the sphere. The green light flared, and a beam shot down toward the planet, cutting through clouds and Earth, burrowing deep. On the command deck, the last of his officers gasped. "Sir, you'll destroy everything, even us." Vrax's smile widened. "That is the point." On the ground, Harper watched as the green light tore through the city. "It's not from above," he realized. Lena ran into the room, breathless. "They're using the core," she shouted. "They planted something in the planet itself." "A weapon." Harper turned sharply to her. "How bad?" She swallowed hard. "If it detonates, nothing survives. Not us, not them, not even Oblivion." The storm above thickened as Oblivion spread its wings, staring at the crack in the earth. Where the green light glowed, Lena stepped closer to the edge. Oblivion. She called out, "Stop it! You have to stop it!" The creature's eyes turned to her, unblinking. "I was not made to save you," it said. "I was made to destroy them." Harper stepped forward too. "If you don't stop it," he shouted, "there won't be a planet left to protect." Oblivion tilted its head, considering. Then its wings flared wide, and it dove into the crack, vanishing into the earth far below the surface. Oblivion descended through molten rock and ancient tunnels, following the green light to its source. The final blow sat in a cavern, pulsing brighter and brighter, feeding on the planet's core. Oblivion reached out with its claws, but as it touched the sphere, it recoiled. Even its dark tendrils burned at the contact. Above ground, Lena and Harper watched the monitors as energy readings climbed higher and higher. Mark whispered, "It's going to explode." Lena shook her head. "No," she said. "It can't. Oblivion won't let it." Deep in the earth, Oblivion wrapped its entire body around the sphere, holding it tight. "You think this will unmake me?" it growled, its voice filling the cavern. "But I am the end, not you." The green light flared so bright it blinded everything. Then the sphere cracked. Oblivion roared, and the sound shook the planet. The sphere shattered, releasing a shockwave that tore through the cavern. For a moment, everything was white. On the surface, the ground split open, and a blast of black and green light shot into the sky. People screamed and shielded their eyes. Then, silence. The air cleared. The cracks in the earth began to close, and slowly, painfully, Oblivion rose from the ground, dragging itself back into the light. It was smaller now, weaker. Pieces of its dark form flaked away like ash, but it stood tall. It had one dot in orbit. Vrax watched in disbelief as the green light faded. "No," he whispered. The officers stared at the screens. "It failed," one of them said quietly. Vrax slammed his claws on the console. "No," he shouted. "This isn't over." But before he could finish, a shadow fell over the ship. One of Oblivion's tendrils reached all the way into orbit, wrapping around the vessel. Vrax looked up into a single glowing red eye staring at him through the hull. The creature's voice filled the bridge. "This is the end." The ship cracked in half, silent in the void, on Earth. Harper watched as the last Draconian ship fell from the sky. He exhaled slowly. "It's done," he said. Lena stood beside him, her gaze fixed on Oblivion as it slowly faded back into the ground. She whispered, "Is it gone?" Harper shook his head. "No," he replied, "just sleeping, waiting for the next time." Lena closed her eyes. "I hope there isn't one," she said. That night, as stars returned to the sky, the city lay in silence. The cracks in the veil, Earth sealed shut. The streets were still, but in the deepest dark, a faint whisper could still be heard, soft but certain. "The final blow is mine." The planet was quiet now. No engines roared in the sky. No shadows of enemy ships darkened the ground. The wind moved through empty streets, carrying dust and ash. General Harper stood at the edge of the ruins, looking out over what was left of the city. Buildings leaned, broken. The ground was scarred by cracks and burns, but it was finally over, or so they thought. Behind him, Dr. Lena Ramirez approached slowly, holding a small scanner. "There's still something down there," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. Harper turned, his eyes hard. "What kind of something?" Lena's hands trembled as she showed him the screen. "Energy," she said. "A lot of it, and it's moving." Below their feet, deep inside the earth, a faint red glow pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. Oblivion was still alive. In the dark, it waited, watching, remembering. That night, Lena and Mark walked through what remained of the underground tunnels. Most of the lights were out. Pipes dripped water into puddles. The air was heavy and cold. Mark kept glancing at the walls, his voice nervous. "Do you really think it's Awake? Lena stopped walking and looked back at him. No, she said. But it's not asleep either. He swallowed. Then what is it? She didn't answer. Far away, in the ruins of the Draconian fleet floating through space, a faint signal blinked from one of the shattered ships it sent out a week. Transmission, barely a whisper, but it carried a message, and someone answered the next morning. Harper stood in the command center, watching new reports come in. All quiet. An officer said, "Too quiet." Harper muttered. Lena appeared at his side, her eyes sharp. "Sir," she said, "we picked up something unusual." He turned. To her, what now? She placed her tablet on the table and tapped it. A ship, she explained. Not Draconian, not human. Something else. In orbit above Earth, a single silver ship hovered silently. It didn't move. It didn't fire. It just watched. On the ground, soldiers pointed their rifles at the sky, waiting for orders. Harper stood outside with Lena, staring up at it. "What do they want?" Mark whispered. Lena shook her head slowly. "I don't know," she said. "But I think they're here because of Oblivion." That night, the ship finally spoke. Its voice came through every radio, every speaker, every screen. It was calm, but cold. "This planet is under quarantine." People froze in the streets. Soldiers lowered their weapons. Lena frowned, listening. Carefully, "What does that mean?" She asked aloud. The voice continued. "No one leaves, no one enters. You are alone now." Inside the command center, officers scrambled to respond, sending transmissions to the ship. "Who are you?" Harper demanded. "We don't want trouble." The voice answered. "Trouble has already come. Your kind woke something that should have stayed buried. It cannot leave this world. And neither can you." Harper slammed his fist on the table. "Oblivion." He growled. Lena's face went pale. "They're not here to destroy it," she realized. "They're here to contain it." Above, the silver ship began releasing thousands of tiny black drones. They floated down like snow, spreading across the surface. Where they landed, they sank into the ground, vanishing from sight. Mark watched them, his voice tight with fear. "What are they doing?" Lena's hands clenched. "They're sealing the planet," she said quietly. "Deep underground." Oblivion stirred. It felt the intruders pressing into the soil, crawling through the cracks. "It's..." Many eyes opened slowly, glowing brighter. And for the first time, it spoke without being asked. "They fear me." Its voice was softer now, but still full of power. Lena heard it in her mind. She whispered back, "You're dangerous." "Of course they fear you." Oblivion's answer came quickly. "So do you." In orbit, the silver ship began charging a strange beam, not a weapon, but something that shimmered like water and light. Harper stared at the monitors. "What are they doing now?" he asked. Lena shook her head. "Maybe sealing us in permanently," she guessed. Harper's jaw tightened. "Not without a fight," he said. But before anyone could act, the ground shook again. Oblivion rose from the earth, larger and darker than ever before. It reached into the sky with its vast wings, its eyes burning with fury. The silver ship turned all its weapons on the creature, but it didn't attack yet. Instead, the strange voice spoke again. "Return to your ground, sleep, or we will erase everything." Oblivion tilted its head, considering the threat. Then it spoke loud enough to shatter windows, its voice echoing through every mind on the planet. "You cannot erase what you do not understand." The silver ship fired. A beam of light struck Oblivion's chest. Burning through its form, the creature roared and lashed upward, wrapping its tendrils around the ship. On the ground, Lena grabbed a radio. "Stop!" she shouted into it. "Both of you. You'll destroy the planet." But neither side listened. Oblivion pulled the ship closer, crushing its hull. The ship sent another beam through the creature's wings, tearing them apart. For a moment, it seemed like Oblivion might finally fall. Then, with a deafening scream, the creature gathered all its strength and smashed the ship into pieces. Silver fragments rained down from the sky. Burning as they fell, the drone stopped moving. The strange lights above faded. Oblivion stood alone in the dark, its shape broken, but still towering. Lena stared at it from the street, her heart pounding. "You're free," she whispered. Oblivion turned its eyes toward her. "No," it said. "Simply, I am alone." It sank back into the earth, vanishing into the cracks once more. Days passed. No more ships came. No more voices spoke. The sky was quiet. The people began to rebuild. But everything felt different now. Soldiers patrolled the streets, but their guns hung heavy in their hands. Children played in the dust, but their laughter was quiet. Lena walked through the city at dusk, stopping in the middle of an empty square. She looked up at the stars, so bright, so far away, and whispered to herself, "This planet has never been more alive," she said. And yet, it's never felt so silent. Deep underground, far below the streets and the ruins, Oblivion opened its eyes again. It whispered softly into the earth, its voice like the wind through stone. "You fear me, you fight me, but you cannot leave me behind." It closed its eyes once more and let the silence return. On Earth's surface, nothing moved but the wind. The stars watched in silence, and the silent planet kept its secret. Waiting. Always waiting.